I had always been fascinated by old, abandoned houses. There was something about their crumbling facades and untold stories that drew me in like a moth to a flame. But my curiosity would lead me to a place that was more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. A place I would come to know as Willow House. It was a gloomy autumn afternoon when I stumbled upon the house. Its once grand architecture had succumbed to time, its windows shattered, and its roof caved in. Nature had begun to reclaim the land, with ivy creeping up the decaying walls like ghostly fingers. As I approached, a chill ran down my spine, and I couldn't help but feel like I was being washed. Ignoring my unease, I pushed open the creaking front door, my flashlight cutting through the thick darkness that enveloped the interior. The air was heavy with the scent of decay and abandonment. Dust motes danced in the beam of my flashlight as I ventured further into the house, my footsteps echoing through the empty halls. It was as if time had stood still within those walls. As I climbed a dilapidated staircase, I heard faint whispers, like the soft murmur of distant conversations. My heart quickened, and I strained to make out the words. They were indistinct, but filled with an eerie melancholy. I followed the whispers to a room at the end of the hallway, its door slightly ajar. The room was in a state of disarray, with broken furniture and shattered glass strewn about. But what caught my eye was a mirror, ancient and ornate, its surface tarnished with age. I approached the mirror, my reflection revealing my growing unease. And then, as I gazed into it, my reflection began to change. My face contorted, my eyes turned hollow and lifeless. I tried to move away, but an unseen force held me in place. In the mirror's reflection, a figure materialized behind me, a specter in tattered clothing, its eyes filled with sorrow and longing. It reached out a bony hand, and I felt a frigid chill pass through me. Panic set in, and with every ounce of strength, I tore myself away from the mirror's grasp and fled the room. As I stumbled down the stairs, the whispers grew louder, their mournful voices pleading for release. I burst out of the house, my heart pounding, and never looked back. The memory of Willow House and the haunting encounter within its walls would forever haunt my nightmares. I never spoke of that day, fearing that others would dismiss it as the product of an overactive imagination. Some experiences are too terrifying to share, hidden in the shadows of a house that time forgot, a place I would never dare to visit again. It was an old, isolated cabin nestled deep in the woods, a place my friends and I had chosen for a weekend getaway. We sought an escape from the chaos of city life, but little did we know that the tranquility of the forest would give way to a nightmarish encounter with the supernatural. The cabin was a quaint, rustic abode, with creaky wooden floors and dimly lit rooms. We arrived on a chilly autumn evening, eager to unwind by the crackling fireplace and enjoy the seclusion the woods provided. The first night was uneventful, filled with laughter and stories shared around the fire. But as the hours passed and the fire dwindled to embers, an unsettling feeling settled over us, like unseen eyes watching from the shadows. I retired to my room, the soft hush of the wind outside serving as a lullaby. But as I lay in bed, I heard it, a faint, ghostly whisper, like the distant murmur of voices carried by the breeze. I dismissed it as the wind playing tricks on my ears and drifted into an uneasy sleep. The next morning, my friends and I discussed the strange whispering I had heard, but they shrugged it off as a product of my imagination. Determined to enjoy our vacation, we decided to spend the day hiking in the woods. As evening fell, we returned to the cabin, exhaustion tugging at our limbs. We gathered around the fireplace once more, the warmth and comfort momentarily dispelling our unease. But then, the whispering returned, louder and more insistent. My friends exchanged uneasy glances as the voices seemed to close in on us. We ventured into the darkened corners of the cabin, our flashlights cutting through the inky blackness. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of unintelligible words that sent shivers down our spines. We searched every room, every nook and cranny, but found nothing that could explain the eerie voices. Our fear mounted as the night wore on, and the cabin seemed to come alive with unseen malevolent forces. In a moment of terror, we decided to leave, to escape the cabin and the haunting voices that seemed to emanate from its very walls. But as we reached the front door, it slammed shut with a deafening force, trapping us inside. Panic set in as we struggled to break free. The whispers grew louder, their words now distinct, filled with despair and longing. The cabin's walls seemed to close in around us, and we were consumed by an overwhelming sense of dread. Hours passed in that suffocating darkness, and just as hope began to wane, the door swung open, freeing us from the cabin's grasp. We fled into the night, our hearts pounding, and never looked back. We never spoke of that harrowing night again, each of us haunted by the memory of the whispering shadows that had enveloped us. Some horrors defy explanation, hidden in the depths of a cabin lost in the woods, a place we vowed never to return to. I had always been a skeptic when it came to ghosts and the supernatural. That is until the night I moved into Hollow Manor, an old, decaying mansion perched on a hill overlooking the town. It was a sinister encounter that forever shattered my disbelief. The day I arrived at Hollow Manor, a chill hung heavy in the air, and the sky was shrouded in an eerie, perpetual twilight. The mansion itself was a looming monstrosity, its windows like vacant eyes staring into my soul. It had been abandoned for decades, and I had purchased it at a surprisingly low price, eager to restore it to its former glory. As I explored the mansion, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. My footsteps echoed through the empty hallways, and I heard faint whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. I brushed off my unease as the product of an overactive imagination. The first night in Hollow Manor, I retired to my bedroom, which overlooked the sprawling garden. I felt a strange presence in the room, a lingering energy that sent shivers down my spine. I dismissed it and fell into a fitful sleep. But then I was awakened by a soft, mournful melody, a haunting piano tune that seemed to come from the depths of the mansion. I ventured into the hallway, my heart pounding, and followed the sound to a grand ballroom. There, in the dimly lit ballroom, I saw her, a spectral figure dressed in a tattered ball gown, her hair cascading in disarray. She played the grand piano with ethereal fingers, her eyes vacant and distant. I watched in terror as she turned to me, her gaze piercing through my soul. I tried to speak, but no words came out. The room grew colder, and I could see my breath as I backed away from the apparition. She extended a ghostly hand toward me, her voice a haunting whisper as she said, "Help me." Panic surged through me, and I fled the ballroom, slamming the door behind me. I locked myself in my bedroom, my heart racing, and tried to rationalize what I had witnessed. As days turned into weeks, the haunting continued. The piano played on its own, and I would catch glimpses of the spectral woman in various parts of the mansion. The whispers grew louder, their words filled with longing and despair. I knew I had to leave Hollow Manor, but the house seemed to have a malevolent grip on me. Doors slammed shut on their own, and windows shattered without explanation. I was trapped in a nightmare that showed no signs of ending. In a moment of desperation, I contacted a paranormal expert who investigated the mansion. He confirmed what I had feared. The mansion was indeed haunted by the restless spirit of the woman who had once lived there. I left Hollow Manor, never looking back, but the memory of that haunting encounter still haunts my dreams. Some horrors are beyond explanation, hidden within the walls of a mansion that time forgot, a place I would never dare to return to.